there's a saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So that ladder, right, that we used to, cynically, you could refer to them as climbing the ladder of success, right? Going from one rung to the next.
Otherwise, that same philosophy should be valid everywhere. So what you just said is like, if you're enjoying a present, then only a future is possible, rather than just dissing your current job and saying that if I become that, I'll be great.
Work has been listening. I haven't not talked this much in a job ever. So I just keep listening, right? But part of what I'm doing is learning my leadership team. And they're very good at what they do.
What is your biggest problem right now in the district that you want AI to solve for? It may or may not have, we don't know, but what would be that problem that you want it to solve?
On AI as a tool for communication and for helping me, think like a thought partner. So
perfect. So welcome to Tomo Club Podcast, our fellow educators and school leaders. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder of Tomo Club. And today in the podcast series, we have Superintendent Fran Thompson. Welcome to the show, Fran. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And I would love if you can introduce yourself to our audience before we talk about the discussion today.
Sure. And Avinash, thank you. And thank you to Tomo Club for this opportunity. My name is Fran Thompson, and I'm the superintendent in Connecticut in Regional District 10, which covers 2 towns and services about 2,300 children in grades pre-K through 12.
Perfect. Now, first of all, thank you for your service. And I think today's topic is about same mission, new seat. And when we try to dissect the topic, it's mostly around how do you find joy and how do you lead with purpose at every level. I find this topic very interesting in today's time, primarily because, first of all, a lot less people are getting excited towards education, working in administration. There's a lot of teacher shortage happening, and especially the leaders you have to build from inside. It's very difficult to expect that you can hire those folks outside right now, but rather build them from the ground up. And that's why I think your insights on this topic are going to be super exciting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I in my journey, I have really feel like I've grown in finding the joy, in the work and in the profession. I think one of the reasons that it is hard work is because we're dealing with a mission, right? It's a very mission-oriented profession, more of a vocation, right, than an occupation. And people, have their different reasons for getting into education and then, of course, into leadership. And I think it's important to acknowledge and recognize that every aspect of education is essential. It works together. It's a complex organizational proposition. And for me, why you get into teaching doesn't necessarily make you a good administrator. It doesn't necessarily make you a good central office administrator. So each role is in itself fulfilling, and there's joy in it. And to appreciate that, I think, is so important. And as I get older, and I am old, it's that wisdom in finding the joy in the work that I think has made a huge difference for me.
No, I agree with you. Adding to your point, I think being a good student also is no guarantee that you'll be a good teacher. Like I remember when I was in high school, I thought I'm gonna teach my cousins math, and I thought I was great at math, but it was hard, and I was like, I think that was a newfound respect for educators in high school when I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how these people have so much patience to deal with so different people, because I'm like, I've explained it twice, and yet you can't understand, and I was like, that was a moment of reflection that just came in. And then I ended up teaching students in my undergrad. So I think that was helpful to understand that, It's not
Yeah.
easy. And so, and I agree. I think your journey also started as an English teacher, I believe, and up to the superintendent. So, can you briefly walk us through that path? And more importantly, what drew you in this career in the first place? And is that reason still valid today?
So, thank you for that. So my journey started back as an English teacher, which I still am. I teach a college course every semester on the weekends, which I love. But it started as an English teacher back at my old high school. So for those of us of a certain generation, it was like welcome back, Kotter. I came back to the school I taught in.
Mhm.
And so and the reason for that was my high school experience made me want to give back, made me want to be a teacher. The amazing educators that I was blessed with to have made those relationships made me realize, geez, that's what I wanted to do. And so, whether it was Mrs. Josephs in English or, Mrs. Taylor or any of those folks that I still remember, giving me that level of support and their investment in my success. And so I have two sisters. All three of us went through the same school. And my middle sister was valedictorian, super smart. She still is wonderful. I'm not that, right? So I was on a different track in terms of my studies and my emphasis on I was very social, and so I got the school spirit award, not the valedictorian award. But to recognize that every student brings something to school, to the class, to the community. Looking back on that now, that was really I think essential in shaping my role in wanting to be a teacher. And so from my time at my high school, my journey, I thought I'd be a career teacher, and I'd retire from there, and that would be me. And then circumstances took me on a different path. I had the opportunity I had a principal who said to me, you should think about being an administrator, and here's why, and your vision and your connection with kids and staff, and so I did that. I appreciated that somebody having that confidence in me, or that faith in me, and seeing that, and that set me on the journey to go from teacher, classroom, to an administrator. And along the way of my journey as an assistant principal at a high school, same high school and then a different high school, my principal, Barbara Britton, was instrumental in mentoring me and helping me and showing me the importance of relationships and how I can make a difference from the classroom level to the school level. And it was still a difference. It was different, you know what I mean? And, but still important. And so as I grew along that journey from assistant principal to a principal in a couple of different districts, those superintendents did the same thing. They invested in me and supported me and brought me along to become an assistant superintendent. So I went from the building level, which I loved being a principal. That was my true joy. You saw that difference every day, and you were with kids and you were with staff, to becoming an assistant superintendent, which was very different, right? And so, and again, the superintendent who hired me invested in me, and she was wonderful, and she mentored me, and encouraged me, and then it brought me to the superintendency where I am today. And all of those experiences, all of those relationships, have formed the foundation, hopefully, that will allow me to bring to Region 10 that purpose and that passion that's already exists here, a wonderful school community, and the lens I'll bring is how do I support the good work that's occurring
Right.
and foster.
Absolutely. And bless your administrator, bless your principal who saw it in you. And, I have a similar story. So a friend of mine worked as a consultant in McKinsey. And I'm like, when you go and enter into any organization, your insights are very obvious, right? So, but you still make a ton of money out of those organizations. So he has a very beautiful, elegant answer to that. That, while you are in the process of it, you can't see the obvious, but when a third person, for them, it is right there. So I think similarly with us, I think sometimes others see a lot more potential in us than we do. So thanks again for that principle to see it in you. And now you are a superintendent and working for the district. Um, you said something very interesting, like which we always hear, but your statement was counterintuitive. We always say that, in a career, it's like a ladder, it's like each designation, each post is like a stepping stone to something bigger. You said some completely against it. Would love to know what's your ideology on that career roadmap versus the career ladder that people talk about all the time.
And I do think it might be counterintuitive when you hear the statement. To me, that there's a saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So that ladder, right, that we used to, cynically, you could refer to them as climbing the ladder of success, right? Going from one rung to the next. And I respect that ambition and that plan, that path that you might have, but I caution people who I see focused on that trajectory. I always caution them out of respect to say, just don't forget the role that you're in now and find that joy, because when you find the joy of the role you're in, you'll be able to have more of an impact. And if you're truly about service, that's the most important thing. And if it's more of a professional pit stop, you may lose the impact that you have in that role. When I have a great story. When I went from one job to the next, to a different job, I happened to run into a couple of staff teachers, some of my old teachers, and great people, right? And they said, at every time there's a change, right? There's a different focus that might come in and things like that. And they said to me about somebody that came in, a couple of folks after me, the new person that came in, they said, geez, Fran, I knew his car wouldn't be in the parking lot long, but I didn't think he'd leave his keys in it with the engine running. Like the staff perceived that as this was somebody who had grander ambitions at the expense of supporting me and the work that I'm doing. And again, it's not about judgment. It's about, my takeaway was, you're missing the joy of working with these incredible educators every day, wrestling with the complexity of the work and exchanging ideas and getting better. So it may not be in your long-term portfolio or strategy, but for that time, listen and learn and find the value of it. I couldn't be here where I am today if I didn't have the path that I did, if I didn't learn from my 4 years as an assistant superintendent. Totally different role than being a principal and being a superintendent. Now I'm learning that, right? But the importance of being part of that team and at the district level definitely prepared me. I could not have gone, and some do, but many without success go from being a building administrator right to a superintendent. There's a bigger vision, there's a bigger picture that I couldn't have gone from A to from there to here. But I didn't realize that at the time, so my journey, I've been very blessed in my journey that I've been in the right place at the right time. And I've hopefully learned in those roles, kind of grown in those roles.
Right. Actually, what you said. So a lot of people talk about living in the present and not live in the future or in the past. I think that philosophy is sometimes we tend to forget in our career roadmap. Um, Otherwise, that same philosophy should be valid everywhere. So what you just said is like, if you're enjoying a present, then only a future is possible, rather than just dissing your current job and saying that if I become that, I'll be great or I'll have a good time. I think so. It just struck me, that the same ideology has to be applied at multiple ends. You also mentioned about relationships, and of course, I can advocate as a student myself that the impact that I had with those two educators in my life, out of hundreds of them over from my K to 12 journey, and then my college grad and everything, I still remember there are two teachers. Their relationship with me has actually defined me and actually given me the most confidence in my life. And can you share any of those stories from the teacher's point of view where you thought that relationship actually changed that child's life in your eyes, in front of your eyes?
Well, sure. And I don't know if the relationship, his change was because of me, but I'll take full credit for it. Absolutely. But I think his mother probably had more to do with it than I did. But I can tell you that Josh, I'm going to leave his last name out
Of course.
Because he'd be he's a humble guy. But Josh, when I was a teacher at my old high school, we were chaperoning a school dance. I'll never forget it. It was that welcome back dance that every nerdy ninth grader shows up and doesn't really know what to do. And I said to my teacher colleague, Mark Saukus, Salk, I said, Salk, look at that kid over there. Who does he remind you of? And he said, oh my God, it's a little you. That's like a mini you, right? So we call him over, and he's kind of against the lockers in the cafeteria where the music's on. And I said, what's your name? And he said, my name's Josh. And I said, Josh, I'm going to make this the best 4 years of your life, my friend, right? And that was the end of it. And then I had him in class as the years went on. I was directing all the school plays, and he became kind of my stage manager, tech guy, super smart kid. Anyway, years later, at his wedding and hearing about his graduation from the Naval Academy, from Rensselaer, and he was in the Navy, and he's an officer, and all along watching his journey and his family grow. It was that moment at that school dance in September that every principal is going to be thinking about next month. He left at his graduation. He gave me a plaque, and it said, Mr. Thompson or Fran Thompson, thank you for the best 4 years of my life. And I'm looking at it now on my wall.
Wow.
As a superintendent, I still bring that to every office I've gone to. That stays with me. And it's just a reminder of the power of a relationship. And I know you guys do a lot of work with social media. That's one of the joys of Facebook, is to watch your former students get families and careers and celebrate successes. And so that's the joy, right? So when you go from one school to the next, one position to the next, if you can find that joy, and as a principal, I've been able to do that as well. And in an administrative role, to build those relationships with teachers and collaborate and again, find the joy in the work. That's, for me, that makes it all worthwhile.
Right. Just you don't even realize that when that magic moment happened, but those words just came out of your mouth, and it made such a big impact. Sometimes they say words are the most powerful thing, and it is in this case. So wow, what a beautiful story on that side. But a lot of school leaders, a lot of aspiring school leaders that I talk to, this transition from education to instructional coaches, and then in the administration where you are managing systems and you're managing human emotions. It is a tough journey in that way.
Yeah.
So how has been your experience, and how did you upskill yourself in this journey? Did you have, of course, you mentioned mentors, but otherwise, did you do anything specific to keep on redeveloping yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You you have to give yourself some grace when you go from one position to the next. There's a cognitive dissonance that goes from where I am, and especially if you're taking another position, you may be very successful in the position you're at, and you may have a certain expectation when you go into a new role. So say you go from a teacher to an instructional coach, right? And you're gonna make it a dynamic teaching environment for every teacher, and all of a sudden you get smacked against a wall with, don't tell me what to do. Who are you? I've been doing it fine. So that cognitive dissonance happens at every level. I think you have to give yourself some grace with that. That's been my experience anyway. And I think you have to meet people where they are. So the key in that scenario I just gave, it's not about me changing the world. It's about how can I support and make change based on where people are at.
Right.
And that doesn't mean be stale, right? Because you got to move forward. We're dealing with the most precious commodity. It's always about every student, every day, right? That work. But I feel like if you go from a coach or you go from a teacher to an administrator, it's getting to know that environment, right? Stop looking forward to the next job, living in where you are, understanding it, building those relationships, and then start to support. How are you serving? So if I'm an instructional coach, how am I best serving the teachers to build their capacity? And for the reluctant ones, why are they reluctant? Building those relationships because maybe they're just nervous, maybe they're not sure, maybe they're defensive. How can I build those bridges? Because at the end of the day, I want to make them, and they want to make themselves better for kids, despite what they're maybe fronting, Yeah. So I think that's part of the process. And that's certainly been my experience. Every situation is, is unique, right? But I'm like in my role now as a superintendent, I'm not the fixer, right? I've been blessed to come into a wonderful district with very strong leaders. So my work has been listening. I haven't not talked this much in a job ever. So I just keep listening, right? But part of what I'm doing is learning my leadership team. And they're very good at what they do. They need somebody to support them and to be a thought partner with them, not to fix every problem. Yeah. And so it's just a different role. And so, that's kind of that. And listen, as far as I can tell, that's where I need to be right now. That kind of feels right. But that's different than when I was an assistant superintendent. There, I was part of the team. I was one spoke in the wheel. And that was very different than being a principal where I was the fixer, right? So it's just very different along the way, because that's what each situation calls for. And if I was looking forward to the next job because that was my path, I may miss those moments where I really did make an impact or I could make an impact, in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think it is very difficult to trust, especially when you're an assistant superintendent and your input may or may not be taken. And whatever your solution may or may not be adopted. So I think it is very tough to still believe in your leaders and still going on. And like a lot of times being a founder myself, a lot of people say that it's going to be hard for you to think about working under someone. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not sure about that. But so how do you work on that front? How do you what kind of mental models or communication strategies did you develop to influence the outcomes when you no longer have that direct authority?
Well, Avinash, I was fortunate, as I said earlier, that my superintendent who hired me as her assistant superintendent, I was one of three. So we had a assistant superintendent of special education, of curriculum and instruction, and I did human resources and personnel and administration, that kind of thing. So she was very aware of gathering people's input. That's what she wanted. She wanted to hear everybody. That was very helpful to me. So when I apply that now as a superintendent, I have a team. I have my own cabinet of leaders, all of whom are top notch. They're wonderful, and it is important to me to value their input. And we as a collective will always come up with a stronger answer. We're better together. But there's going to be times where, just like my former boss had to make a decision, and based on all of the factors, it's something that I brought with me here. So when I hear the principals advocate for something, they're advocating, and I say to people, I said, they're a good principal. They're advocating like a principal should for their building, for their staff. That's part of the organization. You need to have that. So I think it's collaborating whenever possible for me, right? And to say that and mean it, right? People can say, I'm coming in, and what's the catchphrase? My door is always open. I'm a distributed leader.
Yeah.
I'm a shared leader. Well, listen, that's great. But then if the door's closed and you don't take anybody's advice, or then what are they going to do? They're not going to offer. So I think it's learning from that.
No, absolutely. I also had a very interesting thought process that I saw in your notes around thinking about what's best for the job rather than what's best for me. But it's easier said than done. It's very difficult to disassociate yourself. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that the importance of the role is always first than your own personal interest?
I wish if I had the answer to that question, I'd have my own Tomo Club, right? I'd be on a tour. I think I've learned it. So I have learned it because over the years, right? In different positions, in different experiences. And again, I go back, I've been blessed to have principals, superintendents, supervisors who have been very supportive along the way. But if you go into a job with the idea that it is about you, right, then you can do that, and many do. But that's a different leadership style, and that causes some challenges. I remember I was working in a district as a principal with two high schools, and my colleague at the other high school, who was incredible educator, great guy, called me up, and he was interviewing, and he really wanted a candidate, right? And so he had to, I put together committees, my department heads, this and that, and we get the questions and we do the paper screening, and he did all that, and he goes, but I really want this candidate. And I remember saying to him, I said, listen, I said, if you put a committee together, you got to listen to them. If you don't want to know what they have to say, then make them be an advisory group. But if you've stated that we're going to hire this person together or this position together, then you have to honor that. And actually, I guess you don't, but boy, do you lose a lot of credibility if you didn't. And of course, he was smart enough it all worked out. He was smart enough to, have the group get together, and they were all on the same page. And, but that's the challenge you make. When I applied for this position, I was interviewed by the Board of Education, who, if any are listening, you're the best. But I said to the board, I said, look, if you're looking for somebody to come in with their own agenda and new ideas and all new initiatives, I said, I'm not your guy. But if you're looking for somebody to come in and learn, listen, learn, and then deepen the work that's already occurring, then please consider me. And fortunately for me, they did. And I suppose there's some districts where or some schools where they're looking for somebody to come in and be a change agent in that sense. I just think the approach is really situational and important, that you just remember the long-term effects if you kind of bulldoze everything that's been done, for better or worse.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we do have discussed about a little bit about your journey and about the changing roles through your journey. But now I want to talk about the future of this journey aspect, and what are the new challenges and new possibilities now. So is it possible right now, do you think the fundamental mission of public education has become complicated? You know, uh, like I remember when I was growing up, it was majorly focused on academic. Of course, it was overlooking a lot of other aspects. Um, but at the same time, it was a simpler time in that if you look at from that one single point of view. I'm not advocating for it, but but with so many different directions, it is almost impossible for one person, even as a superintendent, to control the narratives. At one point you want your students to academically well. There is, of course, college readiness. There is mental well-being. There's a whole child thing. Uh, and all those narratives might be not always aligning. So how do you believe that it can be clubbed together, or how do you define your goals in that way?
So I think it's a question that it's a question that everybody, whether you're a superintendent or a classroom lead, I think everybody wrestles with that, right? So my statement to how can we do this? My answer is, how can we not? Right? We have to, because at the end of the day, it's about the kids. It's about the kids we serve. So to me, I don't agree with the premise that it's complicated, that education is complicated. I think it's complex, and I think there's a difference. So fundamentally, at its core, education is about teaching and supporting every kid, every student, every day. Period. Hard stop. That's the fundamental mission of our schools. How are we supporting kids, making them safe, advancing their learning, whatever the mission is, critical thinkers, complex thinkers, every day, that's the mission. However it's wordsmithed, right? In a supportive environment. But it's complex, and it's growing more complex because we recognize now that the interconnected nature of teaching and learning has so many different dimensions. So it's relationships, it's feedback, it's critical thinking, it's differentiation. It's all of those elements that when I first started teaching back in the last century, we would, on September, we'd work on this. We'd work on relationships, and in October we'd work on feedback and an assessment on right, and we siloed everything. We know better now that you can't do that. You can't talk about instruction without bringing in relationships and data and assessments. So the complexity of the work is well, to me, that's the joy in the work. It's messy. And that's what I tell everybody. This is a messy profession, not sloppy. There's a difference, right? But every day we're working with human beings, whether it's our colleague next door in the next classroom and the issues that they have or bring, or the kid who has issues that they bring in, they're hungry, or there's something that happened that is totally out of our control and
Right.
not our fault, but it's our problem. And that's the complexity. That's the nature. And if we can make those connections, if everybody can remember their Josh, right? Like I did, like I had, or the number of different kids with the nicknames Sizzle or Teresa or this one or that one, right?
Yeah.
Whoever they are, if you can remember that, that's the joy. And that's what, for me, that's what gets me up in the morning when the alarm goes off. And so I think we still have to do it. And I think we just can't not. And the politics and the misinformation and all of that, it's gotten maybe more pervasive.
Yeah.
But it's still our responsibility to remember fundamentally every student, every day. That's our job.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes if you look at a macro picture, it can be overwhelming. But when you look at a micro task that you have to do for a day, then it can be simpler, right? So sometimes I always say that, you have to change a bird eye view and, get into a narrow view as well, because it's not always fun to think a lot. It's
Right.
important to put that thinking into action on a small scale, and then see how those small changes can bring a massive.
Right. And then how do we leverage systems? That's my job, right? As a superintendent now, how do I leverage systems for my staff to make the complex work, more efficient for them, so that they can focus on teaching and learning. They can focus on the kids and what they need and how they can, build their capacity. And that's how we're hopefully going to use AI as it comes into play. It is in play. And how do we embrace it, and still be a critical, right? With a critical lens, but how do we embrace how it's going to make our work for kids more efficient?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is something that everyone is talking about. So, how do you see the emergence of this AI as compared to the past disruption in education?
I read somewhere that the progression to get to AI, right? So Gen Z had Google, Gen Y had Siri, and now the Alpha generation has AI. And of course, I'm Gen X, so I guess I had like pen and paper, right? So that's a whole different thing.
I'm a millennial and I still have a pen and paper.
So, I heard on one of your guests, I think it was Melvin Brown, say, AI is not a fad; it's a fundamental shift in education, and I believe it is. We have had so many experiences in education where I think as adults, our immediate go-to has been to shut it down. What they can't do. I think cell phones, I think smartphones has impacted us in a way where we embraced it for a while in classrooms, and now we see some of the negative effects of it on our anxious generation, to quote that book title. But I think in AI, it's here. It's not coming. It's not. I mean, we're in it, and so I think we have to be able to embrace it in the sense that how can we make our learners, right, our critical thinkers, how can we create an opportunity where our lessons and our instruction is going to promote critical thinking using AI, right? So when I was a kid, back in the day, right, the multiple choice tests with the Scantron card that would go through, I mean, you could go to ChatGPT and get all the dates and the answers, right? You could do that with Google, right? So, or Siri. So we've got to create better, deeper tasks that get the kids to be critical thinkers, and they're using AI as a tool. Just like as adults, the amount of data that inundates teachers, right? When all they want to do is make a lesson plan to get kids to, in my discipline, right, appreciate the Great Gatsby and the characters and the time period.
Yeah.
Well, if I could use AI to sort through the data and analyze it and then verify it, so I know that it's not hallucinating, but it's legit, it'll help me be a better instructor. And so that's taking different generations of teachers who have different comfort levels and different experiences and providing opportunities to enhance their work by making it better for them. And that, I think, is the task of school leaders and district leaders for the next 5 years. And I think it's already underway, in my opinion.
So I think my knowledge and my understanding about AI has also been constantly evolving. I think my first reaction was very similar to majority of their, that just like very standard comparison, like calculators came, computers came, internet came, so is AI, and it's just going to be a tool. But in the recent past, I've realized that it's nothing like we have seen before. So comparing it with another technology shift is very naive in that way, because first of all, here the distribution is insane. Students have smartphones, students have computers, so it is with them all the time. So that it's the distribution aspect of it in itself makes it nothing like we have seen before. Second is also the fact that it's learning and evolving very rapidly. So it's like a self-thriving machinery, which is fixing it, improving it, and just getting better. So as we speak. And lastly, what used to happen was, for any new change, the state used to come up with guidelines, schools used to come up with a policy, teacher training used to happen, administrative training used to happen. Then students were taught. At this time, it's the over way around. Students are the one who has got it first, and then everybody is catching up. And so hence we need to talk about ethics. We need to talk about responsible use. We need to talk about effective use. At the same time, do not lose your individuality. Be critical thinkers while using AI, because if you are just blatantly using it, then definitely you don't have a job technically, because that input can be given to the AI by someone else also, by AI itself also, right? So I think it's something very different, and I'm glad. The first thing that always makes me hopeful about US education system, how much people can rant about it, but provided that literally every school leader I've talked to, none of them is blocking it in whatever state. I don't know what are the news out there, but in my opinion, none of them has been of the opinion that I don't care, or just shrug it off. I think they have been very, very proactively working on it. Uh, States are working on it proactively. So I think it's gonna be a beautiful journey. I think if we pick up this podcast a year later, I think we're gonna have a very different outlook on this conversation.
I agree. And, Avinash, it's interesting because a lot of those policy think tank groups at different districts are bringing students to the table. And I think that recognition is essential, based on even what you said just a minute ago. And I think that's key. One of my professional regrets, when I was a principal, and it was around 2013, and the smartphones came out, right? And I was all in, man. Teachers use Kahoot it, teachers make it your do nows, get those kids. And I missed the point that the smartphone was an addictive property, right? And it transcended engagement. It was a whole different thing, right? So I wish I knew then what I know now, but I think with AI, I think we are, because of the progression, more prepared to say we have to embrace it. We have to look at it critically, because it just like there's so many positive tools for it, it can also be detrimental, and we have to make sure that if we truly want to be a society of critical thinkers, complex thinkers, it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
Not the be all end all. And I also think that having students who are proficient in it, they're not going to just focus on how the plagiarism. Oh, they're going to no, not if we develop tasks that allow them to use AI as a tool, but AI doesn't think for us. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the key. And if we can do that, I think we'll be well positioned moving forward. But like you said, a year from now, 6 months from now, that may be a whole different conversation, because that's how fast it moves.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it has been a very incredible discussion. Anything else that you think I should have asked, but I missed in this conversation?
I don't think so. I appreciate this opportunity to kind of share my journey and my thoughts. I hope we are a community of learners. And so, if anybody is in Connecticut and around Region 10, reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you and have a cup of coffee with you or talk over a Zoom meeting, because that's how we get better. When you have platforms like yours, people are able to learn from and with each other, and I think that's a great gift for education field.
No, absolutely. I just thought of a question. My last question would be that what is your biggest problem right now in the district that you want AI to solve for? It may or may not have, we don't know, but what would be that problem that you want it to solve?
That I would want AI to solve?
Yeah.
It is a great question. I don't know. I'm here in the summer, so I haven't learned enough yet from my teachers and my families and my kids yet what the biggest problem is. I think what we will probably do is, whatever it is, we will work on solving it together. And I know I rely on AI as a tool for communication and for helping me think like a thought partner. So but nothing replaces the input from the folks who are invested in the community. So whether it's staff, whether it's kids, whether it's families, other community members. So as we look for together about the different problems of practice in the complex nature of the work, that's something that we'll solve together for sure.
Perfect. No, I think that's a beautiful end to our discussion. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for watching. Join our journey at Tomo Club